They were once the elegant balance of the sky created by aviation engineering. Three-engine engineering marvels, the Boeing 727 DC-10 and L-1011 Tristar. These steel-winged aircraft once dominated the skies, perfectly balancing power, range, and fuel efficiency. These marvels of technology, equipped with three engines, were once the true masters of the sky. They flew routes that two-engine aircraft dared not even attempt, dominating the aviation industry. They were the heroes of transoceanic journeys. Today, when you look up at the sky, what do you see? Modern two-engine aircraft and occasionally four-engine aircraft. Three-engine aircraft have now been consigned to the dusty pages of history. Why? What happened? Why did these once marvelous engineering feats fade from the scene? In this video, we take you on a journey through the rise and fall of the once shining star of the aviation industry. The birth and farewell of three-engine aircraft. Imagine it's 1968. Those were the years when commercial aviation was just beginning to experience its golden age. Commercial aviation had not yet reached its peak, because there was a major obstacle in its way. If you wanted to cross oceans and fly to distant destinations, aviation engineering required you to have backup engines. Two-engine aircraft were considered unsafe for long distances. Due to this problem, massive aircraft like the Boeing 707 had four engines. However, these four-engine aircraft consumed fuel like crazy and caused economic problems. In response to this problem, the first Boeing 727 was created. This aircraft attracted attention with its third engine located at the tail and its vertically mounted structure. This engineering marvel enabled operations at airports with higher altitudes and on short runways that even large jets dared not land on. The Boeing 727 was not only successful but also revolutionized the commercial aviation industry. Other airlines around the world adopted this design, and a total of 1,832 units were sold. This was an incredibly large number at the time. However, this revolution was just beginning. A race for long-haul flights began. The Lockheed L-1011 Tristar and McDonnell Douglas DC-10 became the main contenders in this race. Both aircraft were designed and introduced in 1970. During their design phase, both promised to strike an excellent balance between safety and efficiency for long-haul flights. Why do you think these aircraft emerged at the same time? Have you ever wondered? This was not merely a coincidence. American Airlines played a key role in shaping the demand for these aircraft. The airline had begun exploring smaller, more economical designs as an alternative to the larger Boeing 747. This design aimed to combine high passenger capacity with the ability to fly long distances across oceans. American Airlines designed the L-1011 and DC-10 to meet the needs of other airlines. The designs created by the company redefined aviation history. The success of these aircraft was not solely due to engineering, but also their regulatory compliance. According to FAA regulations, aircraft were permitted to fly within a maximum 60-minute radius in case of an emergency to ensure a safe landing. This rule applied to two-engine aircraft and was referred to by pilots as the 60-minute rule. In other words, for safety reasons, two-engine aircraft could only fly within a 60-minute distance to make an emergency landing. This meant that these aircraft could not cross the ocean with two engines. This presented an excellent opportunity for three-engine aircraft. They were more economical than four-engine aircraft and were not subject to the same restrictions as two-engine aircraft. Three-engine aircraft enabled flights across the Pacific, Atlantic, and polar regions. Moreover, they achieved this with less fuel. At that time, the L-1011 had begun to be referred to as the Rolls-Royce of the skies in the aviation industry. It featured an automatic landing system, advanced avionics, and a smooth flight characteristic, making it compatible with Category 2 Autoland systems, and truly impressive. The DC-10, with its versions optimized for different missions, became a symbol of flexibility. It offered flexibility from dense domestic routes to long-range international flights. Both aircraft were hailed as technological revolutions. Ironically, however, the very feature that made them special, the third engine, eventually became a liability for everyone. Over time, the third engine would also spell the end for these aircraft. Do you know what the first steps were toward removing three-engine aircraft from the pages of history? ETOPS, which stands for Extended Range Two-Engine Performance Standards, are the rules governing the performance standards for two-engine aircraft with extended range. It represented the biggest regulatory change in the commercial aviation sector. The most important question was, If two-engine aircraft had become reliable and capable of flying long distances, what would have happened? By the 1980s, engine reliability had become a more important issue. The time between engine failures was increasing. Authorities responsible for decisions related to commercial aviation reviewed their stance and changed their decision. In 1985, the FAA granted the first 120-minute flight time approval. With this decision, twin-engine aircraft could fly to the nearest airport within 120 minutes. In 1988, the ETOPS-180 regulation came into effect. Its impact was devastating for three-engine aircraft. Following these developments, twin-engine aircraft like the Boeing 767 and Airbus A310 could now fly to distant destinations with less fuel and lower maintenance costs. The third engine was now consigned to history and had become an expensive liability. A senior pilot's comments were etched into the annals of commercial aviation history. It's not that three-engine aircraft are bad, it's that two-engine aircraft have become very good. A single modern GE9X engine produced approximately 135,000 pounds of thrust. This figure exceeded the combined power of the three engines of the DC-1030. That's roughly 125,000 pounds. This increase in power could be described as a major revolution. ETOPS times had now reached 370 minutes, enabling two-engine aircraft to fly to any point in the world. By that time, the concept of three engines had become obsolete. Three-engine aircraft were now only impressive on paper. As time passed and aviation engineering advanced, it became clear that three-engine aircraft were creating unsolvable problems. Let's take a simple example. Placing a large turbofan on the tail is both costly and labor-intensive. The engineers who designed the L-1011 had to find a way to provide airflow to this third engine, which was vertically mounted on the tail. What was the solution to this problem? Designing an air channel in an S-shape starting from the tail section. However, this resulted in additional costs. Extra weight, a complex structure, and the maintenance difficulties of this structure were considered disadvantages, because every additional weight would reduce the aircraft's carrying capacity. This would also result in higher fuel consumption. A straight air intake was installed on the tail of the DC-10 aircraft. Although this was a simple method, it caused instability problems during flight. However, the biggest problem was the difficulty of performing maintenance. Performing maintenance on an engine located approximately 10 meters above the ground was logistically very costly and difficult. If the engine had been located under the wings, maintenance would have been much easier. Special equipment was required to perform maintenance on the third engine, which was located approximately 10 meters above the ground. While maintenance on the engine on the wing took hours, maintenance on the engine in the tail took days. This complex structure had some serious and significant consequences. In 1979, American Airlines Flight 91, a DC-10 aircraft, took off from Chicago O'Hare Airport. Shortly after takeoff, the left engine failed and detached. The hydraulic lines were severed and the wing flaps were damaged. This serious incident resulted in the deaths of all 271 passengers and crew members on board. This complexity had some serious consequences. On May 25, 1979, American Airlines Flight 91, a DC-10 aircraft, lost its left engine shortly after takeoff from Chicago O'Hare. The engine separation severed the hydraulic lines and caused the wing flaps to retract. The accident claimed the lives of 271 people on board and 2 people on the ground. This accident was one of the deadliest in U.S. aviation history. The cause of the accident was not due to engineering design flaws, but rather improper and inadequate maintenance. Following this incident, the consequences of all this complexity became clearly evident. The commercial aviation industry no longer wanted to deal with the complexities of three-engine aircraft. The focus shifted to developing two-engine aircraft. By the time the calendar reached 1990, the aviation industry was undergoing rapid change and development. Deregulation increased competition, and fuel prices fluctuated. These factors led to a decline in profit margins. The efficient design of aircraft was no longer a preference but a necessity. The Boeing 767-300ER consumed less fuel than the DC-1030. This difference amounted to millions of dollars in costs over time. The math was clear. McDonnell Douglas recognized this change and began designing the MD-11, an evolved version of the DC-10. The MD-11 featured winglets on the wingtips, efficient engines, and an extended fuselage. However, the MD-11 was produced at the wrong time, because ETOPS-certified twin-engine aircraft had already proven their reliability. Additionally, the MD-11 offered lower efficiency than the performance it was supposed to deliver. What became of the MD-11? Approximately 200 were produced, and production was halted by the company in 2000. Companies that had invested in three-engine aircraft were forced to make difficult decisions. British Airways, Singapore Airlines, and others began replacing their DC-10 and L-1011 fleets with 767s and 777s. Even cargo carriers had accepted this economic reality. FedEx, the world's largest operator of MD-11 and DC-10 aircraft, also began replacing these aircraft with more efficient and economical twin-engine cargo aircraft. The statement made by FedEx's fleet manager was etched into the annals of history. The MD-11 is a true workhorse, but in the long run, it's not the right decision from a cost perspective. Let's explore another aspect of this story. For years, people who boarded aircraft considered a higher number of engines to be a safety feature. In other words, if one engine failed, the others would keep the aircraft airborne, which was deemed safe. Four-engine aircraft like the Boeing 747 continued to operate by marketing this high safety perception to the public. Three-engine aircraft that emerged later also benefited from this perception. But is this perception really accurate? Research has once again revealed the truth. Modern two-engine aircraft have achieved extraordinary levels of reliability. It has been proven that the probability of both engines failing simultaneously in a twin-engine aircraft is lower than the probability of two engines failing in a three-engine aircraft. The Boeing 777 can fly for approximately 100,000 hours without experiencing an engine failure. The probability of both engines failing simultaneously is virtually zero. An L-1011 pilot commented on this issue, saying, "Passengers still ask me about the probability of both engines failing when they see me." The pilot continued his speech and replied, "The probability of both engines failing simultaneously is zero." It took years for people who used airplanes to get rid of this thought. People saw that flights lasting over 20 hours were completed without any issues. This increased trust in twin-engine aircraft. By the 2010s, people no longer worried about safety issues and were only concerned with interior design and entertainment. Today, the once majestic and incredible three-engine aircraft have completely disappeared. KLM retired the MD-11 in 2014, sending it into the annals of aviation history. However, it is still in use in some specialized fields. While some are used for forest fires and special missions, most have been abandoned in aircraft graveyards. When you visit airports like Mojave and Pima, you'll see aircraft like the L-1011 and DC-10 with their paint peeling off. Pilots who once flew these aircraft still remember them with respect. Take a walk at Mojave Space and Airport. Visit the Pima Air and Space Museum. You will see DC-10s and L-1011s lined up with their fading paint, like ghosts silently waiting under the sun. Many pilots comment, while modern aircraft are more efficient and economical, they don't have the same maneuverability as three-engine aircraft. Three-engine aircraft only lasted 45 years. However, this short period was etched in aviation history in gold letters. Three-engine aircraft taught aviation history many things. There is no balance between efficiency and redundancy. As technology advances, this balance will inevitably change. What was efficient in those days may become inefficient years later. What do you think about this topic? Could these three-engine aircraft return under today's conditions? Unfortunately, this seems highly unlikely. Two massive engines with perfect reliability cannot be compared to three smaller engines. The mathematical rules are still clear. However, one thing was certain about the three-engine aircraft that were the shining stars of their time. The third engine at the tail symbolized the ghost of the sky. It had become a symbol of engineering that was pushing boundaries and challenging the limits. When planning a flight, remember that you can fly thanks to three-engine aircraft during your 20-hour-long journeys. Though they may no longer exist today, their legacy still lingers in the sky. Have you ever traveled on a three-engine aircraft? Let's meet in the comments. If you have a passion for aviation and history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Keep your eyes on the clouds until new videos are uploaded.